let's try this again. Very much like this live stream the first time around. Oklahoma's offense was ugly. It wasn't productive. It wasn't able to show us much. But you never apologize for a win, and you certainly never apologize for making the college football playoff, which is exactly what Oklahoma did with a victory late against LSU. So let's break it all down. Welcome on into the SEC Unfiltered Postgame Show. We have fixed the issues and the glaring neglect of what goes on with the live stream feed. Like the video, hit the ring notification. If you are an LSU fan, make sure you stick around for the Lane Kiffin update. If you are an Oklahoma fan, make sure that you're following us right here on social media. That way you keep up to date with everything that we are doing right here every single day. Download the podcast version of the show, wherever you get your podcast listening systems, and check out all of our great work found at secunfiltered.com. And as always, we are proudly brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Sign out today at fanduel.com/SECU. Oklahoma is going to the college football playoff, which means that there is an opportunity for the Sooners to make a run in the postseason. Go ahead and place your bets. FanDuel.com/SECU. Oklahoma is like the one friend that absolutely you can trust at any given moment to bail you out of trouble. They're not going to judge you. They're not going to tell you where you were wrong. They're not going to tell you that they have never made mistakes before. What they're going to do is they're going to listen, and then they're going to give you some advice, and you can trust them with your life. I can trust Brent Venables running a defense like no one else's business. They held LSU, a team that spent money this offseason in the portal on multiple positions at the wide receiver spot, on the offensive line, on the running back room, to 191 total yards of offense. That's incredible. Because even if you want to say, well, there was no Garrett Nussmeier and several receivers were out, it still means that this team was in such a good position that they were able to force turnovers. They were able to force 3 and outs. It was a punt-a-falooza for all afternoon, and they did enough to give their offense an opportunity to take a deep breath, look inside of their playbook, and dial up some plays that they figured would eventually find their way into the end zone. This defense is elite. And I'll tell you what, from the standpoint of, even though there are some questions of overall where this team ranks in the grand theory of the college football playoff realm, I will tell you, you got to feel pretty damn confident on this defense being able to bail you out of trouble. And for nothing else, the fact that they are now going to the college football playoff is a warming feeling for all fans involved. Because if it would have been malpractice, it would have been a travesty, it would have been a disheartening moment for this defense that once again was able to hold LSU to 2 of 14 on third down, under 200 total yards of offense, 85 rushing yards, 3.3 yards per play. And on top of everything else, having one of the best scoring units, one of the best red zone units, and forcing 5 tackles for losses on an afternoon where you had to have it. It would have been a travesty for them to have been left out of the college football playoff. Absolutely, it would have. Now we got to talk about the offense. Guys, at some point, you just got to go ahead and look in the mirror and say, this is who we are. You rely on explosive plays. You rely on busted coverages. You rely on teams finding ways to crap the bed for themselves for you to respond. That really is the case. John Mateer did not have a good day. Again, 3 interceptions, 2 passing touchdowns. One of which was a beautiful strike downfield to Deion Burks. The other one was a busted coverage play, but it didn't matter because you had the speed of Isaiah Satanga, and he was able to punch his way on in. Now, I will say this. You did have over 300 total yards through the air, 318 to be exact. You had 4 different wide receivers finish with at least 5 catches for 50-plus yards. You did a lot of the little things right, and you relied heavily on the explosive plays. So John Mateer did at least show some promise in the passing game. The problem was that when you got into the red zone, he had 2 costly turnovers that probably should have led themselves to an opportunity to make a run into the playoff. That should have made a run toward this being a double-digit victory, and you probably should have felt a lot more confident about where your offense was heading going into the playoff. You don't apologize for having a bad game, because as long as you win, you can go ahead and fix the problems in the offseason. You can fix the problems before you go play your next game. And the next game for Oklahoma at this point is going to be somewhere in the playoff. They will probably be hosting a playoff game in Norman in 3 weeks. They probably will be the 8 seed. They probably will have to go ahead and fix some faults of their offensive personnel if they want to be able to win that football game and guarantee that they advance. But at the end of the day, you're in the playoff. And there's so many teams that are on the outside looking in that feel like that they've gained momentum at the right time to where you ask yourself, well, why are we being considered and you're not? I'll answer it for you pretty quickly. Number one, you were able to do your job at the very beginning of the season and you didn't allow the momentum to deteriorate after having 2 losses in 3 weeks. You lost to Texas in Red River. You lost to Ole Miss at home. That was a very even playing field. And more specifically, that was a very easy way for you to say, momentum is dying. We're entering a win now mode. We got to be able to respond the rest of the season. There's no margin for error. We can slip up at any time. And your defense didn't do that. And your offense was able to do just enough as it has in every single game. This, at least for the first time, you can ask yourself, was a moment where, hey, our offense was so good that we actually outgained an opponent by nearly 200 yards. Like, that's something that you can pride yourself on. The margin of error, I mean, quite literally, look at this numbers, guys. The last 2 weeks, last 3 games, you have been outgained by Tennessee, Alabama, and Missouri by 340 yards. You had 393 yards versus 198. So nearly 200 yards of offense. You had a little bit of luck at times, and you also had a couple of deep strikes down the field. With those elements, that was enough to guarantee you a win once again for the second time. And that's pretty big. In fact, I would say that's really big in that standpoint. But still being limited when it comes to the rushing attack. I mean, again, you only average, 75 yards on the ground, 2.7 yards of play. You really weren't able to move the football once you got inside the red zone. You relied on the explosives to go ahead and win downfield. Like, you don't apologize for it, but you also have to realize those are going to be the faults that can hurt us when we actually make it to the playoff and we have a single elimination matchup. And so that's where right now, if you were Oklahoma, you got to ask yourself, what can we do to fix it? But you don't worry about it until tomorrow. You go ahead and you celebrate the win tonight. And I'll be completely honest, for Brent Venables, this is a crowning achievement. So many people gave him flack. So many people said that he wasn't meant to be a head coach. So many people looked at him and said, this guy is in over his head. There's no reason why we should retain him after a 6-7 season, year 1 in the SEC. And what does he do? He makes sure that his defense is so poignantly active and physical and getting after the line of play and winning at the line of scrimmage and putting pressure on quarterbacks that even when his offense is stalling, they were able to do just enough to guarantee their spot in the college football playoff. And they are going to go to the college football playoff. I look at Ole Miss's resume, and you look top to bottom. They have a loss to Texas, which is bad. But they have a win over Michigan, which will be a top 20 team at the end of the year. They have a win over Tennessee on the road, and they have a win over Alabama. All teams that will finish in the top 25. Their resume is so bulletproof that they cannot be left out. And if they are left out at this point, they're quite literally saying your offense wasn't good enough, therefore that we're going to penalize you. And I don't think that they're going to do that because their defense is so damn elite that they're going to be put on in. Now, as for LSU, you don't want to talk about this game. It was disgusting. It was dreadful. Michael Van Buren was 14-25. He had 96 passing yards. He had a bad interception. No receiver had more than 30 yards per play. You had Trey'Dez Green and Xavier Thomas each finished with 30 total yards. The rushing attack was bare minimum. You weren't effective inside the red zone whatsoever. You relied so heavily on your special teams to at least put you into an opportunity to score. There were so many things that went awry in this matchup this isn't what you want to talk about. What I will say is you got to remind yourself right now you are on Lane Kiffin watch. And according to people that I've spoken to, it does feel like you are trending towards that. You will see him be signed on the dotted line at some point very soon. He will be right into the conversation for being the LSU head coach. And then you go ahead and pivot toward that. You finished the year 7-5. It was a losing season. And ultimately, this was always going to be a losing season after you found a way to come up short against Vanderbilt, after you came up short against Alabama, after you came up short against Texas A&M in embarrassing fashion. It was not a good year. But the beauty of this all is that LSU is still LSU, and they will be able to respond immediately from this. They'll be able to bring in the right recruits. They'll be able to bring in a coach that they believe is going to fix the problem, and they'll be right back in the hunt for the college football playoff. I don't know if that comes tonight. I don't know if that comes next week. I don't know if that comes in the next 15 minutes. But I do believe that you will have a decision made on who is going to be your next head coach, and I do not think it is John Summerall. And I do believe that currently you are looking at probably the guy who is right now sitting in Oxford, watching the Iron Bowl and trying to figure out who is going to be in charge. What is my next course of action? Now, what's going to be really interesting is to see, does Keith Carter and Lane Kiffin have a conversation that ultimately is going to be pivoted after next week? Because if Alabama loses tonight, Ole Miss is going to be going to the SEC championship for the first time in program history. If they go to the SEC championship, I think that Lane Kiffin is going to have to stick around at least for one more week. Now, for LSU, it means little to nothing. They could make the announcement tomorrow and say he is leaving. He will be coaching us through the SEC championship game, and then he will be gone. They could easily say that, or they could say, well, we're going to wait this thing on out until after the playoff, and then he can leave us. But ultimately, we're waiting for that decision to be made. I think that we're going to have an answer pretty soon. But as for Oklahoma, now you're in the playoff. And kind of the beauty of what is where you rank at 10-2 with an incredible season with wins over Tennessee on the road and Alabama on the road and Michigan. And you can still say that Auburn is a pretty good win. You could probably say that LSU is a decent win. You're not going to be playing in Atlanta next week, which means your status is not in jeopardy whatsoever. You will be locked into one spot and only one spot until the end of time. So, in a standpoint, you got to feel pretty damn good about where you are when it comes to college football playoff. Doesn't mean that you are guaranteed to have an easy pathway to the postseason. Doesn't mean that you're guaranteed to have an easy win round one. But you got to feel good that you're in the playoff. They can't penalize you and move you down because somebody else won and you lost. And you still would now have a better record than most teams who are behind you. So a lot of chaos would have to occur that's really just all around you. And if anything, you just go from hosting a playoff game to being on the road in round one. But from my standpoint, Oklahoma, you're in the college football playoff. You are now one of 4 SEC teams guaranteed to be in the postseason conversation. And maybe we have a 5th, and maybe we have a 6th. I highly doubt it, but at least we would have 4 teams representing the conference, unlike last year when there were only 3. All right, before we get on out of here, let me tell you about my friends over at FanDuel. FanDuel.com/SECU is the perfect place to sign up. Get started with $300 in bonus bets when you win your first $5 bet. The app is free, simple, easy to use. Sign up today at FanDuel.com/SECU. Get in on the action right now. Final score in the Palace on the Prairie, 17-13, Oklahoma, guaranteeing its spot in the college football playoff with a double-digit win season in year 2 of the SEC. Who would have ever envisioned this to be the case? Actually, a lot of people. And you definitely prove that you belong in the college football playoff, in my opinion, with that defense. Offensively, there's going to be some things that you have to fix, and I'm not sure that that can happen before you face off against your first team. But question for another day. You're in the playoff. Nobody can complain about that. Until after the Iron Bowl, you guys have a good rest of your night. Peace.